Warning: this podcast contains adult material and is not suitable for anyone under the age of 18. You have been warned. Do you like movies?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
What do you think about horror movies? Blood, guts, and mayhem.
Groovy.
Then sit back, relax, and listen to the Dead and Rotting Podcast.
All right, tonight we are on the Dead and Rotting Podcast, and I've got my guest here. If you would, before we start, just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do in the horror biz and or movie biz.
Hey, I'm Ryan Barton-Grimley. I am a director, a writer, a producer, and sometimes even an actor. And I make indie films, which means I do craft service, I cast, I edit, I color correct, I do, all that stuff. I do all of the above. And I love it. So I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah.
So you're a busy man when it comes to making movies.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've always got, I'm always finishing a movie, got a few writing, got a few others out, trying to get some couple pennies to make them. And, it's this weird, I don't know, circus act kind of always. But yeah, that's it. It's a full-time deal, Yeah. With a family, I might add, and children and all this business. It's madness.
I know what it's like with the kids. They wanna come on here and be little co-stars, or So what got you interested in movies, and more specifically horror movies?
Got me interested in movies. I don't know, man. I think it started probably with acting as a little kid, just having a lot of imaginary friends and whatnot. I grew up in Zimbabwe for the first 10 years of my life, so going to the movies was a really big deal there. They only had one theater that I knew of in the capital in Harare where we lived, and there was a drive-in. So seeing a movie was like a pretty big deal. And my mom had some family here in the United States, so seeing an American movie was an even bigger deal. So my folks would take me there as a little kid, and I'd lay down in the back seat while they had their date night, in their mid-20s with their kid. And so I got to see the Magnificent Seven and like Wild Bunch. And I guess in the late 70s, early 80s, there were all these Westerns on their circuit, like the rerun circuit, that was all they would play, really. So I just saw a lot of those kinds of films and just loved them. And I remember as a kid really like kind of role playing a lot of that stuff. And then I would try to get my friends to do it. And then once I was a teen, I discovered like Taxi Driver and like punk rock and Sid and Nancy. And then, all of the sweet 80s horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser and just all of this kind of stuff, like peak 80s, like Halloween. And then my really good friend growing up, Matt, his older brother, Simon, was obsessed with horror makeup. And so he would do prosthetics and all this stuff just for fun. And so we got to kind of be little kids and watch him do all that with his friends, because he was really into heavy metal, and like all his friends were all in these gore bands. And so he would make prosthetics for them to wear when they played. And like, I don't know, we just kind of were all into that kind of stuff. I was really, and then I kind of just got into movies, period. I just loved Goonies and Die Hard and, Big Trouble in Little China and just all this stuff. And at one point, it occurred to me that you could actually be an actor, and that I was living in the United States only, about 100 miles away from Hollywood. And I was like, oh shit, people actually go there and try to do that. So I started trying to do theater and learning how to do theater. But I literally thought of myself as Robert De Niro in like Taxi Driver, or like, these like hardcore movies. And I was trying to do that kind of acting in like community theater. It was just, it's totally hilarious and stupid. But like, a friend of mine went to the Academy of Dramatic Art here in LA, and he was like, you should come meet all my actor friends and blah, blah, blah. And I just got kind of sucked into that world, but very quickly realized that I didn't really fit the mold kind of like a early 90s kind of TV actor. I was a little more edgy. So I started trying to write plays, and wrote scenes and wrote hundreds of bad scripts and kept trying to make movies. Um, and then I guess, I went to UCLA. I got into the theater program. I couldn't get into the film program because I didn't have money to make a movie. But I discovered all the digital like stuff right at that time where it first started. And, I had like early Final Cut Pro things and like really bad Sony cameras that you could try to like put a film lens on and all this BS. And I just got like kind of more into like the DIY version of it. And I used to help all my friends' bands with like their shows and film their shows and do all the DIY like promotions for them and that kind of thing. So I was just kind of into that kind of like straight edge DIY punk aesthetic. And then that went into filmmaking. And I was like, oh, dude, you could just make a movie. And I tried and failed like over and over again, but I finally made a couple shorts. And then I saw the Dogma movies and I was like, oh, these people, like, they're making a point of making these digital. They're making a point of them being stripped down. And I kind of started trying to do that. And I made a couple things that never saw the light of day and just kept going for it, man, over and over and over and over again. And Hawk and Rev, the movie, where we connected, is my fourth movie. It's just crazy, right? And I'm just finishing the fifth now. And I mean, I have this weird group of actors and artists and stuff that will all kind of work on them, and I had names in my very first project, but that was pure dumb luck that a financer just showed up and liked it and never put any money into a movie before. So they just took a chance on me. I was a total greenhorn. And the movie's good. It's called The Truth. It's on all the services. Has John Hurd and Danny Baldwin, Brendan Sexton in it. But after I made that movie, and I mean, I think we were one of the first like 20 or 30 movies that streamed on Netflix. After that movie, trying to move up from there to the studio level, I just kept beating my head against the wall. And funny story, I work with my wife's brother, Ari Schneider, a lot. He's in pretty much all the movies I've made, and we've even co-wrote some.
He's Rev.
Yeah. Yeah, he's my brother-in-law. He's my wife's little brother.
Nice.
And he we wrote a script together called The Rejects in 2011. We did the first draft. This thing, there's a new group of people trying to make this thing. This is how long we've been trying to make a bigger movie. And we just keep quitting and making a small movie because we can't get a big one made. It's so funny, but it's true. And I think we end up making more fun, weirder, more interesting projects because we can we just kind of make them, as we go or as we can with what we have. And I don't know, that's kind of where it's at right now. Strange trip.
What would you say would probably be the toughest part about making movies?
I mean, the first thing is like just trying to make the first one, because like there's a lot of pieces, like trying to write a script is really hard too, and it's actually pretty tough to write a even decent script, I think. But once you've got a script, you can go and film, and you can kind of rewrite as you go, and then you can rewrite again in the edit, so it can end up making the script look a lot better than it is. I think having the confidence to just try and do it the very first time, probably not a short, but trying to make a feature is tough. Just like committing to that amount of work, because it's a lot of stuff and there are a lot of collaborators and it takes forever. And then I would say after that, finding money is really hard, especially now. It's super tough. Yeah. I mean, there's basically giant movies and series, and then like low budget movies like I make, which, cost basically nothing. Making the actual movie when you're on set with the actors, that's the most fun thing ever. It's like the best. Like you're just in the flow state, kind of directing or acting or both, and just kind of creating with people. Thankfully, I've had awesome people always to work with. Yeah, and I always try to pick people who are like down for the cause more than are super experienced, because I feel like you can basically learn, you can't learn like crazy special effects, but you can learn almost everything if you're curious. But you can't learn like like commitment and like wanting to be part of a thing and collaboration. That's like really tough. If you can find people who do that, it's awesome. So I would say the hardest thing is just even thinking you should have a voice. That was really tough for me. The self-doubt thing of being like, well, will anybody even care about this thing? Like, why am I doing this?
I know exactly how that feels.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And after I finish every single one, man, I'm always like, oh God, I don't know if I can do that again. And then I give it like a couple months. And then I'm like, I'm just gonna give it a couple months. And then within like a week, I'm like opening up, final draft files to start like tinkering on a script. And then I'll start like making a storyboard in like a previs program. And I'll be like, oh God damn it, we have to make this thing. How are we gonna do this? Look at the checking account balance. I'm like, we can't do this. How are we gonna do it? It's so stupid. Yeah.
Well, I know that you do a lot of writing on your own films and stuff. So, can you tell us like an idea of like what your writing process looks like?
Sure, sure. I mean, it's interesting. Like the older I get, I realize like I always have a million ideas. And like I have a 4-level filing cabinet to the, I guess, the right on my right here, that's just filled with like little scraps of paper and like napkins and like books or random stuff. Like the shortage of ideas is never an issue. The issue is like, how do you know which one will really kind of survive the writing process, right? And for film, it's for features, it's like kind of structural, and, so I kind of had this crazy like digital document that simulates like no card board, and I just always try to like shoehorn the idea into this initial 80s scene board, which is like a total nightmare. But you see really quick whether it has legs. You'll be like, oh damn, that's a good setup, but there's nothing beyond that. And then what I do is I don't give up on those. I sort of just mentally put them to the side, because once they're there, they're kind of operating in the background. And at some point, little solutions to problems will just pop into my head just based on regular life. Some of them show up like very formed, where you're like, oh, this is the setup, this is the midpoint, and this ending would be badass. And I love this character, and this fucking character has to die, you know? And then like I just kind of work backwards, and once I can fill in everything that's there, then I kind of let it sit for a week, and then I just try to bang out a draft as quickly as I can. So, it's like, 20 cards of 15 to 20 cards of a setup, right? It's another 15 to 20 cards of like after the setup, and the characters are actually doing it, like all of the stuff before everything goes bad. And then I always have a midpoint where I try to like create some weird surprise or something where it just like really flips. And that's really tough, because you've got to like challenge your own idea and be like, that's lazy. It can't just go. You've got to like flip that somehow, which then shuffles all the way back to the beginning. And then that three, that third quarter is always the toughest part of every script. Every feature film writer, if they are honest, will admit that that's the toughest part, because you start destroying the character you fall in love with that made you want to write the movie, and you've got to like expose what makes them shitty, and like how they're going to change, and have them fight for it, and it gets messy, you know. And yeah, and then that last bit is always a pain in the neck, because you got to like tie everything up so the audience feels like they're not screwed over. Like, why are they watching this movie? Why did they pay for this movie, or pay with their time, or whatever? And I always feel like I want that to be good for them. So I bang out a first draft as quickly as I can, leave it for a week, don't even look at it, and then I'll work on something completely different, so that it literally erases from my brain. And then I will go back, read it in a full sitting, not take any notes while I do that, then print it out, and then reread it and redline the whole thing, and then start rewriting from the beginning. And I will rewrite every single day from the beginning till nothing else bothers me. And I just keep going like that till I get to the end of it. And I do the same thing with edits, believe it or not. And it's insane. It's why I always end up being the final editor on my movies, because like a couple frames, or like a slight look, or like something on the person's face right where the cut is, that doesn't jive with what was in the story, or like the emotion or the projection or something, for me is like, so I don't know, like it's like music. It's either in tune or out of tune. And I keep kind of going through each quarter of the movie. You know what I mean? I divide them into 4 reels, and I'll just cut, get a base of all of them, and just keep like rewriting, re-editing till I feel really good about it. And then it's weird because people always go, well, like, how do you know you're done? And I'm like, it just like, I get to a point where it literally doesn't bother me. I'm like, oh, that's good. No, I like that. That's good enough. Like, like, and it just happens. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I don't know.
You just kind of get tired of it after a point, I reckon, too.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so what are some inspirations for Hawk and Rev? It kind of seems like it's a no-brainer, but I kind of wanted to hear your side of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say in its final form, inspirations, Lost Boys for sure, Big Trouble in Little China, Napoleon Dynamite, Dumb and Dumber, Shaun of the Dead, definitely. Just all those kind of like, and then like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, like a lot of those like buddy comedies, buddy westerns, all that kind of stuff. And then believe it or not, like Kevin Smith, just like Clerks and that kind of stuff.
I can see I can see all that in there for sure.
Yeah. What
So
do you see?
I see definitely a whole bunch of the '80s, uh, and all of those movies in particular. That's what I was thinking of when I was going into it. But I was like, I'd rather let him say it. so so I'm not just off in my own little world there. So is there going to be a sequel, Hawk and Rev 2?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I got a couple other things kind of ahead of it. Um, but I believe there will be. I got again, another group is trying to make this like 12-year-old script come to reality as like a big ass movie with like big names, but and I want it to happen so bad. Um, and I'm also finishing another low budget movie right as we speak. And I think it will be hitting the festivals this spring. Hopefully, it will have a premiere. We'll see. Maybe in the summer, maybe it'll get pushed to the fall. But I have a couple other smaller horror projects that I think I'm going to do first, just because I'm just trying to like up the amount of stuff that I make in terms of speed. So one is a like a kind of a kids ghost movie that will be, I don't know, I think my kids are actually going to act in it and I'm probably just going to shoot it, and it's more kind of PG. And then I have like a fake documentary called Wolfburger that's about a guy who believes he's found okay, so he's an assistant dog catcher in this small town, and it's a documentary made by his neighbor in his very first film class. And it's just all about this guy Wolfburger and how he thinks, because he's the assistant dog catcher, he has like these big dreams, and he thinks he's found evidence of a long extinct wolf, and no one believes him. He got kind of famous when he found like a paw print of one, and now it's later down the road and things haven't worked out, and the documentary starts then, and there's an attack on this church lady, and he finds another footprint, and there's a zoologist lady who kind of likes him because he's weird like her, and they try to find this wolf. Turns out it's not a wolf, man. It's a freaking werewolf, and he gets bitten. And so it's a documentary of this
Nice.
dude and like interviews, like, kind of like a Christopher Guest, Best in Show, or kind of Spinal Tap kind of thing. And he, does transform into a werewolf. So I want to kind of play with,
Oh yeah.
showing that with Audrey Haworth, who I do all the effects and production design with, and like try to make the longest, funniest, most disgusting werewolf transformation scene ever. and the dumbest with the best lines that just goes on forever. That's super fun. And then he becomes a werewolf, and his boss, who's like the head of the animal control, basically likes to kill every animal. He's a all kill all the time type dude. And so it becomes this kind of battle with that dude. But there's a twist that a lot of people have been hiding from Wolfburger in this town. The fact that there are a lot of werewolves in this town,
Dude, that sounds awesome. I'm on
right?
board, man.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm gonna be in that. I'm just gonna shoot it
Gonna be
and
behind the
just like,
camera.
yeah. I'll be the documentarian dude, and I hope Ari Schneider will play Wolfburger, because I mean you saw him
Nice.
play Rev.
Right.
He's funny as shit.
Yeah,
He
he
is
is. He can pull off some
goddamn
good.
funny. He could pull off some really funny stuff, man.
I
And
mean,
just all those people, like the guy who played Terry, the accountant, Kevin Ocampo, and just all of these incredibly talented actors who, through COVID and the strike have not really done anything, man. It has been like dead over here. It's crazy.
that's what I was wondering how the strike has affected you personally. Has it kind of stopped?
Well, so like in terms of projects I was trying to pitch, I mean, it killed that unless they were a tiny thing. I couldn't really shoot because I am SAG and I am DGA, and I don't want to screw with the unions. I'm not like super pro union, but I also recognize that like some people are and people I work with are.
Right.
And about I care about making the stuff the most, but I also care about us all being protected,
Right.
I guess, second. And yeah, these tech companies make the studios look like like a bunch of nice people who play by the king's rules. These streamers are rough, man,
I can
in terms of
imagine.
the way they distribute and everything. It's just brutal. All these old movies you can't even find on any streamers because they just like shelve them. It's brutal. So now that allegedly it's all over, um, yeah, I mean, it's looking good for spring to do something, you know. Hopefully Wolfburger, if not this Kid Ghost movie, or D all of the above. I mean, I think we're gonna try to make them literally for like 5K, you know,
Wow.
literally. And then of course there's all the sweat equity that I'll do before and after with the post and the pre-production
Right.
and but that may grow. We'll see once we're actually talking to people. They may get bigger. They kind of always grow a bit. People just come out of the woodwork, man. Because at the end of the day, I wouldn't say I'm like democratic, but I love to just kind of add people to the mix, and I'm like, I don't really care about people having a ton of experience. If they're like into playing a role and they're right for it, it's totally fine with me. And in our lower budget movies, like, it doesn't matter if there are no names in it. If anything, it makes it better if there aren't, because it's weird when you have a low budget movie and then there's some like recognizable actor in it. It just feels out of place. Whereas if there's a lot of like fun, talented people you don't recognize, like, it just feels more authentic. I don't know. That's kind of always been my thing.
That makes sense to me
Yeah.
because it is true when you see like a big name actor in something that's a lower budget. It's kind of strange.
You're
Uh,
like, oh shit, what happened to that person?
yeah. What's going on?
Oh no, something bad happened to them. My first movie, and I don't want to speak illy of the late John Hurd or the late Tom Sizemore, because he was cast initially and we replaced him for John Hurd. But like, name actors, once they've been around for a while and their career is receding, they're their excitement to play roles. It's not what you would hope.
I can imagine.
And you find somebody at like a community theater or somebody who does improv or something who's just like fun, and you're like,
Very
this
enthusiastic.
is perfect. This is the person we want, because we don't really shoot like crazy long hours. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm kind of I'm like, we'll get like 5 hours, have a bit of food, and get maybe an hour or two more, and then we're usually pretty done. You know,
So no 12-hour days.
I mean, there are people who do 18, man.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's just
You
crazy.
hear this, and I know like some pretty successful DPs, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we did 6 18-hour days in a row," and I'm like, God, that better be a good movie, man. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
It's like, how are you alive at this point?
Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. I can't personally do it, you know. Also, I don't feel, well, I don't know, once everybody's tired, the kind of energy sags and it's not as like immediate,
Right,
and for film acting, you really need that kind of like pop. And once you get it, like just move on,
right.
Like I
Otherwise,
don't
the
understand how
enthusiasm kind
Fincher
of wanes.
does 50 takes of stuff,
Oh yeah,
and you're like, how I don't know. It's like, I mean, he'll probably love working with AI actors, I imagine, in the future because he
right,
can program them.
right.
I love that guy. He's a fucking amazing filmmaker. I mean, I'll watch anything he makes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, I know that you had some name actors on your first movie, but have you ever really? I know you live in L.A. or around that area. Do you ever get starstruck from time to time? See somebody that you really
Um,
go fanboy over? I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it hasn't happened in a while. I met okay, so when I was a teen, I met Clint Eastwood, like as a 16-year-old teen who was just starting acting. It's a weird story, man. My family, after we moved here from Zimbabwe, we settled in this place called Carpinteria. It's about an hour north of LA. So on the ocean in the Central Coast, California. Very small town, very old timey. It almost feel it's Ronald Reagan's ranch is around the corner from it. So it's that kind of old cowboy vibe. Lots of avocado farms and stuff.
Gotcha.
And Clint Eastwood had a place there. And my dad had a glass and window company, and I would work for him every summer and after school on afternoons and stuff because family business. And one day I like went with this other dude. I was like his helper, and we were working on this guy's shower. And I look up, and there's this dude's cowboy boots, and I looked up, and it was Clint Eastwood. I mean, I literally was like, "Holy shit!" I said it
Wow.
out loud. He's like, "You all right, son?" And I was like, I'm a really big fan. He's like, which movie? And I was like, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I don't know, Unforgiven. Like, this is so many movies, you know.
All of them.
And I mean, he was a big inspiration for me because he would act in his stuff, which was a thing I always thought was really cool. And when I had a chance to do it, I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that dude. Recently, who have I gotten starstruck? I met this British comedian Jimmy Carr, who's like he's on Netflix. He's got a ton of specials. He's a huge, huge celebrity in England, and I got pretty starstruck meeting that dude. He was badass. He is one of the filthiest comedians. I couldn't believe it, and he was just making fun of me the whole time, which was pretty great. Yeah, let's see who else. Who else? I did meet Bryan Cranston, from Breaking Bad and
Oh, nice.
whatnot. And I got invited by an old friend who made a movie with him, and he was one of the producers. And they needed notes for this edit, and they had like an early screening of the edit of this movie, and it was fucking terrible, man. It stunk to high hell. And he was doing great work on the screen, but it was just badly cut and the music was weird and it's just weird. And I was like, did anybody who worked on this thing make a movie before? Like, we find some middle schoolers who know how to use CapCut on a freaking iPad. Like, but and I was saying this to our friend, and then suddenly some person came over and was like, "Oh, Mr. Cranston would like to meet you. He hears you have some notes." And I went over there, and I was much more reserved in my delivery of notes to Bryan Cranston. Because he's a lovely guy, like a real gentleman.
I've
And I
heard
was
he's
like,
really nice. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, everything needs to be tightened up. You know, faster is always better. Cut early, cut into scenes late, get out of them early. Like, just like literally the stuff, just you should just write that all and put it on the wall in front of the editor of every movie and every writer. Get into the scene in the middle of the action, cut out of it, way before you're expecting. Do not wrap things up. Like, which Hawk and Rev is a great example. I mean, there's a bloated 2-hour cut of that 90-minute movie somewhere on a hard drive, and it's, oh my
Coming
man,
to Blu-ray.
Yeah. Oh my
the
God.
uncut director's version.
But it's just not even good. Like, I mean, some of it's funny, but it's not, I don't know.
So what would be some advice that you would give to someone who's aspiring to be in the movie biz?
The movie biz? Well, if you like horror, stick to your guns and make that. And just try to kind of reinvent it a little bit and really play with the camera, and really mess around with, like, this latest movie, Listen Carefully, that I'm just finishing. I really got to mess around with, like, tension and, pace and all this stuff, which is really interesting and fun and different than comedic timing, which I did a lot of stuff with Hawk and Rev. And and like knowing when to cut and when not to, and leave that tension hanging there, because as the creator, you're always nervous that people are gonna like be like, this is boring or whatever, and look away. But there are certain ways to really pull people in, and I think, like, if you're starting out, these, my God, man, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, that thing has ProRes on it. It's insane.
Right.
That's better than all the DSLRs we shot Elijah's Ashes and Repatriation, 2 of my movies on. You could definitely make a movie with that thing and a couple of LED lights. I think the thing you need to do is really practice. And so that you're not super, you're not like super sacred about everything, because the longer you do it, you realize, like, there's always a better version. Like, you can always get another iteration, and you can really play with stuff. So I would say, film school is interesting, and I think you could learn a lot of stuff there if you don't have access to gear, and the film school is not super expensive, and it's like a local one or something like that, and it's not going to kill you. You're not going to have student loans and all that stuff. Like, real talk, maybe there'll be some committed people there. You could get something together, make some shorts and stuff like that. You could also do that completely learning on your own with YouTube and just mess around. There's so many incredible artists on there, man, who just share all their knowledge. It's insane. Like, you can learn how to shoot in $150,000 Arri Alexa camera Like there's like 50 camera assistants who are like, oh, and here's the menu. And then there's like all, all the most amazing gaffers are like, this is how I lit this scene, and in this famous movie. And, there's so many incredible editors and VFX people and all this stuff. And a lot of screenwriters too. I think it's a little spottier on that. But I think like if you want to make features, you should mess around with some shorts and just try to not be precious and just make a bunch, and then try to crank out a feature script or two that's only like 90 minutes. And don't shoot the first 5 you write. Don't do it. Like wait, I think, till you're like on the 5th one. Don't be like, I'm that guy who's got that one script and I'm going to hold on to that. And that's the one we're going to do. Don't do it. Like, write a script, get a bunch of people together, even if they're your friends, get some beer and some snacks and do a read through and film it, even with your phone on a tripod, or prop it up against a book and listen to it, and you'll be like, hell no, we're not filming that. Like, I do that before we ever film and go back and do another round or two of rewrites. Always.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And then, like, let yourself have that feeling of finishing a short, like finishing a 10-page script, shooting a thing, even if it's just a scene or two. Mess around with different aspects of it, montages, different things like that. Then try to make a feature for literally as little as possible. Find Mark Duplass's, speeches he's made at different film festivals like South by Southwest over the years. He did a bunch in like the mid 2010s where he made all these like just go and shoot it kind of speeches. And you can definitely do that. And like, if you are going to go to film school, like, don't bother going to one unless it's going to be USC, UCLA, or NYU, or AFI. And AFI is only grad, because those truly are like heavy duty industry schools. So if that's a route you want to take, and you're going to blow some money on film school, you will at least get the access from those particular programs. Do not do it for the other ones unless you're like made of money or something. I don't know. But other than that, man, just practice. Like get your friends together and shoot scenes, make backyard movies, have fun with that. Because the truth of it is, like, what's his face? Ryan, the guy who made Brick, and he made a Star Wars movie. He made Looper. Ryan.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that dude.
Dang it! What is his name?
What was his last name? It's not Ryan Reynolds.
No. John. No.
Yeah,
it'll come to me later. It'll come to me.
Yeah. He just did those like whodunit.
Right.
Yeah, movies on Netflix. So that dude, he said this great thing. He's like, I do the same thing as a writer and a director on a tiny movie like Brick, which was a tiny movie that he made, which is an incredible movie, if you've never seen it. And I do the same thing on a $200 million Star Wars movie, just with more pieces, but I do the same stuff. I write the script, I make sure it's human. Stuff happens, people try to get stuff, people change in the story, and then I try to go out there and, get the best version of the actor I can, and then we just try to do it. And that's kind of all it is, man. And then you got to cut it all together. And that's another super important thing. If you want to be a great director, really edit your stuff. Because if you I mean, that's the best film school, man. Because all your great ideas, you're like, oh man, I love Quentin Tarantino, so I'm gonna shoot my first short just like Quentin Tarantino or Wes Anderson or some other like super heavy stylized director, right? And I mean, they come about their style organically. Usually, they're not necessarily copying a style. Maybe they're copying a bunch and making it their own, but like if you just go and try to do that, it feels false, right? And then you're trying to edit it and you're like, oh my god, why doesn't any of this work? And like that has been the best film school for me, really, because I didn't go to film school. I never went to film school. I thought about going to grad school um, for film, but then I was like, I could just try to make a movie. I have a family to feed. What am I gonna like? Seriously?
Right. Because that stuff ain't cheap.
No, it
Grad
ain't cheap.
school.
So I had the luck, and it was because we live here in LA. Really, my daughter's school, they have a nice theater, and there's a Shakespeare program here in LA that for some reason, there were all these actors who weren't working during the strike. There's a thing here called Shakespeare LA, I believe. Al Pacino is like
Wow.
obsessed with Richard III. He's been trying to play I guess he made a movie of it in the 90s. He's been playing Richard III on stage since he was in high school at the High School for Performing Arts in New York, right? And now he's in his late 70s. He's still doing read-throughs of Richard III, and they just do them for high schools here because they're trying to spread the Shakespeare in the world, which is totally nuts to me. So we just randomly went to her high school, and Al Pacino sat on the stage and read Richard III with a bunch of other actors. And it was incredible. First of all, it was amazing. I actually understood what the hell Richard III was about, because like bad Shakespeare is rough, man. It's
Yeah.
super rough.
Yes.
But like they were all so great. It was like incredible. But the best part of it was there were all these middle school theater students, and they got to ask questions of Al freaking Pacino, what he would do if he were starting out today as an actor. And I shit you not, he said, "Oh, I'd fall in love with the craft of it, and I'd try to do it as much as I could with people I liked." And then he said, and 99.9% of the time, you're not going to get the role as the actor. You're probably not going to get the money as the filmmaker, but you can still go put on a show. You can still go make a low budget movie. And now more than ever, you can get people to watch your low budget movie all over the world if it's halfway decent. And I mean, you could definitely get it on platforms through all these aggregators. I don't know if people are actually, you probably won't make much money, but you can do it, man, with like literally, it's more DIY friendly now more than ever. It's just there's so much content. That's the thing you're battling. So I guess if you mess around with your friends and make something really fun and different, you probably got a better shot. You don't even need to go to film school. You know, that's
Right.
kind of, I just thought his advice was really good.
That's really cool.
Kind of what I've done always.
Right.
I was afraid to talk to him, to be honest. He's in The
Kind of,
Godfather. I was like, oh my God. I can't believe this is happening. He's like an old dude now, but
still
yeah, my
intimidating, I'm
advice would be
sure.
to fall in love with the damn art of it, man. Because on the low budget movies, you're gonna have to do quite a lot of it. Whether you make a drama or comedy or whatever it is. Really, like you kind of got to fall in love with all the different departments. Like I love the art department. It's like so awesome to me. You know, I love all the background and the props and costumes and all that stuff because it like paints the scene. And no matter what camera you have, if the people are just against a white wall and like wearing their clothes they came with, it's just usually not, doesn't give you paint the picture for you as the audience. And I think you can kind of just try all that stuff. And if you start making a short with a phone, and you try to make people feel something when they're watching it, whether they're laughing or they're like, a little upset by what's going on, like leave them with something good. Try to put some music to that thing and then try to play it in a local film festival. Really do it. See it with an audience, see what works. And then don't be like crushed, like get back up on the horse. That's the thing. Because I mean, even Scorsese said it in interviews for this last movie. He said if you are a filmmaker and you see a first cut of your movie, like a rough cut, and you're in love with it, there's something wrong with you. Which I thought was amazing.
Nice. I've never heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I mean, that guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I would say so.
These people
So
all know what they're doing. A hell of a lot more than I do.
don't short yourself, man. You know a hell of a lot more than you think, for
Oh, I
sure.
know. I'm always just playing around.
So, what is, and this may be a hard question, but what would be your favorite horror movie of all times?
Alien.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that movie so much. I've gone back and forth for years, man. I'll go like, I don't know. I love that the French movie High Tension for a long time just because it's just got this bonkers twist,
Oh yeah, that was a good
you
one.
know? Yeah. And it's just so creepy and French in some weird way. And like, I don't know. I loved Jacob's Ladder, which isn't really a horror movie. I loved it. I love The Shining. So many movies, but I just keep coming back to Alien just because it's so like economical and just it's scary. It's like really scary. Oh, and recently Smile.
Oh yeah, that was a
Smile
pretty.
scared the shit out of me, dude.
Yeah, especially towards the end there, when she's
Yeah,
in the home.
that's
Man, that
hardcore.
was yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been scared by a movie in a while. I watched all of Ari Aster's stuff, and people were like, "Oh my god, those fucking movies are really scary." And I was like, I wasn't that scared. They're fucked up for sure, and they're
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like really scared, but there was something about Smile that just got under my skin, man. And like I found myself in an elevator, like in this medical building,
Oh
and
no.
this person like looked up at me, and I was like, "Holy fuck, what is going on right now, man?" Like it got me. Yeah. But Alien, I think Alien's my favorite horror movie right now. I'm really excited to see how people react to this thing I'm just finishing. Listen carefully because it's so different than Hawk and Rev. It's a psychological horror, that's like got a crazy structure, and it's just about this young dad, or youngish dad. I play him. I'm not that young, but like um, you know, trying to get his daughter back, and then like twists happen, and you're like, oh shit, this is about a lot more. And I try to channel some Hitchcock into there and like really play with the that. And there's some kind of like really trippy, scary stuff in there that's strange and off and like punchy. I'm excited to see how people feel about that and see it because it's such a different tone, and very different than Wolfburger, which I was just talking about.
So where can people find out information about your stuff that
Well,
you're doing?
it'll be on all my socials in the next couple of months. We should know more about the premiere, the festival premiere for Listen Carefully, um, which we're hoping it will be like one of the really big international horror fests. Um, I mean, they played Hawk and Rev, which was just nuts to me, man. I mean, we made Hawk and Rev with like our friends, you know? Like, if I could tell you how small that fucking movie was, man, it would just blow your mind. And like, it played in Brazil in this opera theater with like 5,000 people.
That's awesome.
Fuck, so weird. It was awesome.
That is
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, and like Mexico City and in like Europe and here. I don't know, man. It's so weird. So I've definitely had people being like, hey man, like give us your next thing. We want to premiere it. Like we don't even care what it is, kind of. Which is weird as an artist to hear that they're just like, just give us something. I'm like, what? This is way too much pressure,
Yeah,
man.
no pressure.
Uh, yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, and then by March we'll have all of that squared up and it will be up on the socials. I mean, you can find, I don't know, all my movies on all the services. The Truth is on literally everything around the world. Elijah's Ashes, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that's a comedy about homophobia. Early me and Ari working together, I think is hilarious. You know,
I really enjoyed it as well.
yeah, yeah, and that I shot all around. Where I grew up in Central California. That's the town. That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
That's literally what it's like. That is my parents' house. Like,
Oh, wow.
that's the Lions Club that doubled as the funeral home. That's the local
Okay.
cemetery.
Nice. Some behind the scenes stuff there.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of people from my high school that are even in the movie. So, and my dad's plays a really creepy prisoner on the prison bus on that movie. And that thing's everywhere. Repatriation, this drama I made, is harder to find just because it's a drama, and people are. But Hawk and Rev, I think, is still like picking up everywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's still on Amazon Prime last time I checked.
Yeah, and Tubi, I think it's on Tubi, which I'm like loving these kind of ad supported platforms like Tubi and Pluto
Oh,
and
yeah.
Freevee and all this stuff because they like, I don't know, they're just more access. People don't have to have a subscription, and there's a lot more of them like internationally now, which I think is really good because it was actually preventing a lot of low budget American movies from being seen overseas, which kind of sucks because like, our big budget movies everyone sees obviously, and
Right.
they are what they are, but yeah. I
Well,
always go to justwatch.com because you can put in a movie, you can put in the territory, and you can see everywhere where it's playing, like all the platforms, subscription, price, rental, all that stuff. That's a brilliant, brilliant platform.
nice. I've never heard of
Uh,
that.
yeah, yeah, I love that thing. I would say, yeah, look at my socials. I've been kind of lax on the socials just because I feel like I had like just carpet bomb people with Hawk and Rev stuff for so long. I felt bad, and I just I don't know, man. Socials have kind of taken a dive too, I feel, and I don't know, it's tough. But I always have a website. You can always find me online, Ryan Barton-Grimley. If you just search me. I have a multiple websites. You can always message me. I always respond. That's my favorite thing to do, actually, is to respond.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say look out for Listen Carefully. I think it's going to be a really fun, uh, strange like ride. Like it's a really fun, fast paced ride. And I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of movies that like attack the subject of like fathers and their inability to connect with younger children. And that's kind of what this is all about. And it's like Jacob's ladder, for a new parent. And other than that, I would say, watch a lot of features. Like if you want to make features, don't watch series. Like, it'll mess your brain up, for the structure gets all lazy, and then you'll have to rewrite and re-edit everything because you'd be like, I don't understand. I'm at 110 minutes and I can't cram in the ending. It's because you've been watching a bunch of long, slow series.
That's right.
No.
I think I have the opposite problem. When I go to write something, it's always I'm getting close to like 90 pages, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty much done. How do I get more pages?
I think that's okay, though. So, I mean, the script for Listen Carefully was 90 minutes, 90 pages. And, I mean, we definitely did some pickups, but they were for like weird, like B-roll kind of scenes. Hawk and Rev, yeah, 95 pages. That old 110 page thing, that's for dramas in the 70s.
Yeah, because it would be kind of dragging if some of the movies were stuck to that 110 page rule or guideline, whatever you want to call it.
You know what I really want to see someone do some horror that's not political, but like adjacent to political, that kind of like plays with like the after effects of the political. I've been kind of playing with that kind of stuff in a writing project. It's tough. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that seems pretty tough.
I keep wanting to make fun of it, and I think it like actually kills it. But maybe that's what needs to happen, is it really needs to just make fun of it. Specifically like the divisiveness in the world, well, just mostly like in our political system. I just kind of want to make like a satirical comedy about both sides.
Nice.
I would like to see more of that, because I feel like there's a lot of really safe stuff.
Right.
People aren't really, I don't know. Yeah, they're like afraid to offend people or something, and I think it could be done where you don't,
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of where my head's going, future-wise.
That's definitely some tough territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you spending time with us here this evening on the Dead and Writing podcast.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, man. So that wraps us up for this week on the Dead and Rotting podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tim Tanner. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can check us out on the socials. On Instagram, you can find us at Dead and Rotting Podcast. And on Facebook, you can find us under the Dead and Rotting Podcast. You can also send us an email at deadandrottingpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to chat about some art that you're doing that's horror related and or any type of film stuff that you're doing, please send us a message on our socials or shoot us an email. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on Spotify. It would be awesome if you go over to our YouTube channel as well. Subscribe over there and like our videos. Thank you for listening this week, and we will see you next week. Tim Tanner, out.